I remember the night I got the message like it happened 5 minutes ago. It was 2:08 a.m., and I was sitting on the living room floor with a glass of whiskey I hadn't even touched. My tuxedo was hanging on the doorframe, her wedding dress, well, the dress I thought was hers, was still zipped in its garment bag next to it. My name was etched on every invitation, printed beside hers like some kind of promise that had already begun to rot from the inside out. I was 3 days away from marrying the woman I'd loved for 5 years, the only woman I'd ever really pictured myself building a life with. Her name was Emily, and if you'd asked me back then, I would have said she was perfect. Kind, funny in that dry, sarcastic way that makes you feel like you're in on some private joke, and when she looked at me, God, man, she looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that made sense. So when I got the message, my heart didn't break immediately. It paused. Like it was waiting for my brain to catch up to what I'd just read. You sure you know who you're marrying? That was it. No greeting. No sender name. Just that one sentence. At first, I laughed, out loud, actually. It felt like some stupid prank, like maybe one of my groomsmen had too much beer and too little self-awareness. But then there was a second message, sent just a minute later. This one had a link. Click if you want the truth before you say, I do. My fingers hovered above my phone. For a second, I thought about just deleting it. Why ruin something beautiful, right? Why let some troll plant doubts in my mind? But curiosity, it's a hell of a thing. It doesn't whisper. It screams. And I think some part of me, deep down, already knew. I clicked. What loaded was a video. No title. Just a paused frame of a dimly lit room and a girl with long brunette hair tied up in a messy ponytail, wearing a mask over the top half of her face and not much else. I almost closed it. But something about the curve of her smile, the tilt of her head, the tiny freckle just below her collarbone, I knew that body. I'd traced it with my hands for years. It was her. It was Emily. I couldn't move. I couldn't blink. I just sat there as the video played, her voice soft and teasing, her laugh familiar in a way that twisted my stomach into something ugly. She was performing. For strangers. For money. 1,000 little things started clicking into place in my head. The late nights at work. The locked phone. The sudden spike in her confidence, the lingerie I never saw her wear for me. I paused the video, turned off my phone, and just stared at the darkness. I didn't sleep that night. I barely breathed. The next morning, she came into the kitchen humming to herself like nothing was wrong. She was wearing my hoodie and drinking from the mug that said, Future Mrs. Evans. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted eggs, and I nodded like some actor playing a role he never auditioned for. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. That's not who I am. Instead, I did what I thought was smart, I started digging. I searched her name. Her email. Her old usernames. It was all there if you knew where to look. Forums, chat rooms, payment logs under an alias that wasn't very different from her real name. And then I found it, her channel. Hundreds of videos. Thousands of followers. And the worst part? She started doing this 2 years ago. Right in the middle of us apartment hunting. Right around the time she told me she wanted to save up, just a little more, before we got engaged. I felt sick. Like I had been breathing in lies for years and only just now realized the air was poisoned. Still, I waited. I waited because I didn't know what to do. Canceling the wedding felt like giving up on 5 years. Going through with it felt like signing a contract with a ghost. So I did something I'm not sure I'm proud of. I kept pretending everything was fine, and I started planning something else on the side, something for the wedding. Not a confrontation. Not a fight. A reveal. I backed up the video to a flash drive. I hired a friend to help me put together a short film, something subtle but unmistakable. I booked the projector for the reception under the guise of a surprise slideshow. And then I smiled. Every day I smiled. I kissed her. I told her I loved her. And in my head, I rehearsed exactly how I'd watch her face when the truth played in front of everyone she lied to. But even then, even with all that hurt building inside me, I wasn't ready for what I found next. Because one night, I got a second anonymous message. She's not just doing shows. You need to know who else she's been with. It came with a photo. Blurry, taken through a window. But the man in it. I recognized him. It was my best friend. The guy I asked to be my best man. And suddenly, this wasn't about shame or money anymore. It was betrayal on every level. The walls of my world didn't just crack, they collapsed. And all I could think was, what the hell am I supposed to do now? I always thought heartbreak would come in a single, dramatic moment, like a loud crash, a slammed door, a shouted confession. But mine came slowly. Quietly. Like a leak in the ceiling you don't notice until the whole roof caves in. After I saw that photo of Emily with Ryan, my best friend, my best man, something inside me shifted. Not broke. Not snapped. Just shifted. Like I stopped being the man who was in love with Emily and became someone else entirely. Someone watching the wreckage of his own life from a distance. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't say anything to him either. I needed time. I needed proof. And the worst part? I still had to go through the motions. Wedding planning. Cake tasting. Seating arrangements. Every day was an act, and I was the lead in a performance I never auditioned for. Everyone thought I was the happiest man on earth. I was just the best liar in the room. But now I was playing chess. Quietly. Carefully. I started keeping notes, dates, times, screenshots. I went through old texts between me and Ryan. Suddenly, things stood out I never noticed before. Little jokes. Innocent smiles. That one time Emily said Ryan helped her move a dresser when I was out of town. And the timeline started to form like pieces clicking into place. I realized it wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a fling. It had history. I checked hotel bookings under Ryan's name, used an old favor to get access. There were a few stays at a hotel 10 blocks from our apartment. 2-night bookings. Weekdays. While I was at work. The thing about betrayal. Once you see it, you start seeing everything. I couldn't help but stare at them differently. At brunch with our friends, when Ryan poured her a mimosa, their hands brushed for a second too long. When she laughed at his joke and touched his arm. I used to chalk it up to them being comfortable. Now, I saw the way she tilted her head when he talked. The way he looked at her like he already knew how she tasted. And yet, I kept my face calm. I laughed at the jokes. I thanked him for helping with the wedding. I even let him borrow my car one afternoon. What's that they say? Keep your enemies close. I started recording conversations, audio clips. Nothing incriminating, but enough. Emily had no idea. I'd lay in bed beside her, pretending to be asleep, while she texted someone in the dark. When I asked, she said it was her cousin Megan planning the bachelorette trip. I guess Megan suddenly learned how to type like Ryan. One night, I called Ryan. My voice was light, casual. Hey, man, mind coming over tomorrow? Need your help with the slideshow. He agreed, no hesitation. Still smiling through the phone like the snake he is. That night, I stared at our reflection in the mirror. Me and Emily. She was brushing her teeth, humming something soft. I looked at her and tried to feel angry. But what I felt was something else. Grief. Grief for a woman who once held my hand in the hospital waiting room when my dad had a heart attack. Who cried when I got the promotion. Who used to leave notes in my lunch when I worked 12-hour shifts. And I kept asking myself, was that woman ever real? Or was she just another mask, like the ones she wore in her videos? The next day, Ryan came over. I had everything set up, the photos, the music, even the placeholder video file I'd pretend was a slideshow. But that wasn't the reason I invited him. I needed to look him in the eye. We sat on the couch, laptops open. I brought out a bottle of whiskey. Old times, I said. He smiled. Poured himself a drink. We talked about music. College. I let him feel comfortable. And then I said it. Hey, can I ask you something weird? He laughed. Of course. Have you ever cheated on someone? He paused, just for a second. A flicker of discomfort in his smile. Why, he said, trying to keep it casual. I shrugged. Just curious. I mean, being around Emily and all. Makes me think about loyalty, trust, you know. Ryan leaned back, took a sip. I mean, everyone makes mistakes, he said. That was his answer. Everyone makes mistakes. Not no. Not never. Just that. That's when I knew. I didn't need a confession. His eyes said everything. Right, I said, nodding, smiling. Mistakes. He left half an hour later. Said he had to meet someone. Probably her. I sat in the dark for a long time after that. The next day, I copied everything onto a second flash drive. I created a file with 2 videos, one from her channel, and one from a hotel camera feed I managed to get through someone I used to work with in security. It was blurry, low quality, but enough to show Emily walking into a hotel with a man who looked suspiciously like Ryan. I labeled it, The Real Story of Us. I planned to play it after the toasts. When everyone would be watching. When no one could unsee it. But I wasn't sure if I was doing it for justice, or just to make sure they felt what I felt. Maybe both. And then something happened I didn't expect. Emily came home late. Her makeup was off, her face tired. She dropped her purse, looked at me, and for a moment, it looked like she wanted to say something. Like she had a secret balancing on the edge of her lips. But instead, she walked over, kissed my forehead, and whispered, I can't wait to be your wife. I didn't say anything. Because part of me wanted to scream. And part of me wanted her to say it first. To give me a reason not to go through with what I was planning. But she didn't. She went to bed. And I stayed up, watching the video again. Frame by frame. Every lie. Every smile. Every word that once meant everything, now meaning nothing. I spent the night in the living room, lights off, laptop screen casting that pale, cold glow on my face. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink much either. I just kept watching that video, over and over, like I was trying to burn it into my memory. Every frame felt heavier than the last. That was my fiancée. My Emily. Walking into a hotel with my best friend, arm brushing his as they passed through the sliding doors. It wasn't just infidelity. It was intimacy. Familiarity. History. And the worst part? I still loved her. I hated that I did, but I did. Love doesn't die in a clean snap, it bleeds out slowly, leaving stains that last long after the person is gone. The morning came like a slap. Bright light, birds chirping, like the universe hadn't just imploded inside my chest. Emily came out of the bedroom in her robe, hair tied up, her face glowing with wedding anticipation. We're supposed to meet the florist at 10, she said, sipping her coffee. Don't forget. I nodded. Wouldn't dream of it. She smiled. That same smile that used to light up my day. Now it just made my stomach turn. The florist appointment was a blur. Roses. Peonies. Centerpiece dimensions. I barely heard a word. She talked with that excited, animated voice, the one she used when she wanted people to think everything in her world was perfect. I watched her closely, not like a groom admiring his bride-to-be, but like a detective watching a suspect. How could someone lie that easily? How could she hold my hand and kiss my cheek and plan a life with me while hiding something this massive? Afterward, I told her I needed to stop by my office. A lie, fitting, I guess. I drove to a quiet parking lot instead and just sat there. Letting everything catch up to me. That's when I got the second message. A text from an unknown number. There's more. Check your email. My pulse kicked up. I opened my inbox. One new message. No subject line. No sender name. Just a Dropbox link. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the screen. Then I tapped it. There were 6 videos. All screen recordings. All of Emily. Not from her professional setup, but private moments. Her in lingerie, talking to the camera. Laughing. Whispering names. One of them ended with her saying, "I wish you were Ryan." I froze. That wasn't an act. That was real. That was a slip, or maybe a confession. I sat back in the seat, my breath short, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about sex. This was emotional. She was in love with him. And suddenly, I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal, or the fact that I'd been living a fantasy for months. Maybe even years. I closed the app and sat in silence. A couple walked by with their dog. Laughing, smiling, real. I used to have that. I used to think that was us. And now I couldn't tell if she ever loved me, or if I was just the guy who fit her image of marriage material while she chased something else on the side. I drove home slowly. Every red light felt like a countdown. My hands gripped the steering wheel harder than necessary. When I walked through the door, she was on the phone with her mom, talking about seating charts. Her voice was soft, sweet, filled with excitement. I stood there for a moment, watching her. Imagining what it would feel like to ruin her world in front of everyone. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt hollow. That night, we had dinner with her sister and her husband. Another wedding thing. More pretending. I looked at the couple across the table and wondered if they were real. Or if they were just as fake as us. Emily talked about our honeymoon plans. Bali. She wanted to see the rice fields and swim with turtles. I stared at my plate. When her sister asked if I was excited, I smiled and said, "Can't wait." Lie number 34. Probably. I'd lost count. Back home, we got into bed, and for a second, I almost said it. Almost whispered, "I know." Almost ended it all right there. But I didn't. Because I needed to see how far she'd take it. I needed to see what kind of person she really was. The next morning, she left early for her dress fitting. I waited until she was gone, then sat down at my desk and pulled out the flash drive. I edited the video. Clean cuts. Slow build-up. A perfect crescendo. The first part looked like a sweet wedding montage, our photos, our trips, her laugh. And then came the shift. The grainy hotel footage. The screen recordings. The still of her whispering Ryan's name. It was brutal. Raw. Unmistakable. I added one final slide at the end, white letters on black. This is the woman I was about to marry. And the man I called my brother. I backed it up to 3 different drives. Uploaded it to a private YouTube link, just in case. I looked at the clock. 5 days until the wedding. And I still hadn't decided whether I'd go through with it. Whether I'd let the ceremony happen and show the video at the reception, or pull the plug now and disappear. Either way, someone was going to bleed. Later that day, I got a message from Ryan. "Hey man, quick question about the groomsmen suits. You free?" I stared at it for a long time. Then typed back. "Yeah. Come by." He showed up an hour later, all smiles, sunglasses on, like he hadn't just helped destroy everything I believed in. I offered him a beer. We sat on the balcony. Small talk. He didn't suspect a thing. I looked at him and realized, I missed him. Not this version of him. But the version I thought he was. My best friend since college. The guy who helped me through breakups. Helped me move 3 times. Gave a speech at my dad's funeral. But that version didn't exist. Maybe never did. "I've been thinking," I said casually. "About love. Trust. How we know who really has our back." He tilted his head. "Deep stuff, man. You all right?" I smiled. "Just feeling grateful. You've always been there for me." He nodded, proud. "Always will be." I raised my glass. "To loyalty." He clinked it. "To loyalty." And in that moment, I realized something that chilled me to the core, he actually believed it. He didn't feel guilty. He didn't flinch. Whatever line he crossed with Emily, he convinced himself it didn't matter. Or that I'd never find out. But I had. And he was going to feel everything. You'd think the hardest part would be finding out. Seeing the video. Feeling your chest collapse under the weight of betrayal. But the hardest part is pretending. Pretending like nothing's wrong. Like you're still the man about to marry the love of his life. Like your best man isn't sleeping with your fiancé. Like every guest flying in from out of town isn't walking straight into a lie. 4 days until the wedding. That morning, I met my mom at the venue to do a walkthrough. She was glowing with pride, looking around like she was stepping into a fairy tale we'd built together. And it hit me, this wasn't just my story anymore. If I went through with the ceremony, if I showed that video, it wouldn't just break Emily and Ryan. It would shatter everyone. I caught her smiling at the string lights we'd picked out last month, her voice warm and nostalgic. You know, your father would have loved this place, she said. He always dreamed you'd get married somewhere beautiful. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah. He would've. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She deserved a son she could believe in. Not a mess unraveling at the seams. After she left, I sat on the edge of the stage where we'd be saying our vows. The air was still. The room empty. I imagined Emily walking down that aisle, veil over her face, smile carved in porcelain. And me, standing there, holding the truth behind my back like a knife. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Emily. A text. Hey babe. Thinking we should write personal vows. Thoughts. I stared at the message, then slowly typed back. Sounds perfect. I was getting really good at lying. Later that afternoon, I met with the DJ to finalize the reception playlist. He asked if I wanted to include a special video presentation. You know, childhood clips, first dates, funny memories. I almost laughed. Yeah, I said. I'll bring a USB with everything on it. Should be around 10 minutes. He nodded. We'll cue it right before the first dance. Perfect. That night, Emily asked if we could sit down and review the seating chart together. She was on the couch, wine in hand, her legs draped over mine like we were the happiest couple in the world. I stared at her, wondering how many lies she'd told in this very spot. How many nights she stayed up texting Ryan while I was asleep next to her. She pointed to the diagram. I was thinking we put your cousin Adam next to my Aunt Jackie. He's hilarious, she's always too quiet, might balance each other out. I nodded. Good idea. She looked up at me, eyes wide. You okay? You've been quiet lately. I hesitated, then said, just nervous. Big week. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. I get it. But it's all gonna be beautiful, I promise. That kiss lingered longer than it should have. And it made me feel something I wasn't ready for, grief. Not anger. Not rage. Grief. I was mourning the version of her I thought was real. We went to bed early. She curled into me like she always did, her fingers tracing slow lines across my chest. It used to make me feel safe. Now it felt like a noose tightening. I didn't sleep again. The next day, I met with 2 of my groomsmen, Tom and Eric, at a brewery. Old friends from college. Real friends. Honest friends. The kind who would punch Ryan in the jaw if they knew what he'd done. Tom raised his glass. To the last days of freedom. Eric laughed. You ready for married life? I forced a smile. I'm ready for something. They cracked jokes, talked about bachelor parties they'd been to, stories from our dorm days. For a second, I felt normal again. Like maybe if I never told anyone, never played that video, I could just bury it. Swallow it whole and forget. But then Eric said something that broke the illusion. You're lucky, man. Emily's one of the good ones. Real. Loyal. You can see it. I laughed too quickly, too loudly. Tom raised an eyebrow. You all right? I covered it fast. Yeah. Just nervous, man. You know how it is. They bought it. Because why wouldn't they? I was the one wearing the mask. That night, Emily's maid of honor, her childhood best friend, Lindsay, came over to help her pack for the hotel suite she'd be staying in the night before the wedding. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through emails while their laughter echoed through the walls. I caught snippets of their conversation. Have you told him about, the early days? Lindsay asked. Emily hesitated. No. What's the point now? Lindsay lowered her voice. But what if he finds out? I froze. Emily sighed. He won't. He's not like that. He doesn't dig. They laughed again. She was wrong. I was digging like hell. I waited until they were asleep. Emily passed out in the bedroom, Lindsay in the guest room, and I quietly unlocked her laptop. I had tried this before and found nothing, but now, I was methodical. I checked a hidden folder in her media drive. That's where I found the receipts. Private emails. Direct messages. A spreadsheet of clients. Some of the names were familiar. One of the names matched someone on our guest list. A man from her gym. Another was a former coworker. She wasn't just doing webcam work. She was building a business. And I was the fool financing her lifestyle. I copied everything. Every email. Every file. Every client name. Not to release it, I wasn't that cruel, but to remind myself that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. She built 2 lives and hoped they'd never collide. 3 days until the wedding. At this point, I'd stopped questioning whether I'd go through with it. The real question was how I'd end it. In public. At the altar. Or quietly, alone. But every time I thought about letting her off the hook without anyone knowing, I thought about the lie. The performance. The mask she wore in front of my mother. My friends. Me. She didn't just betray me. She used me. And I had the tape to prove it. I made one final edit to the video that night. Right after the clip of her walking into the hotel with Ryan, I added audio, my voice, raw, recorded into my phone. This is the truth. Not the version you were shown. Not the fantasy we were sold. This is who she really is. And I want everyone who ever cared about me to see it. Then I cut to the screen recordings. One after another. Then the client list. Blurred names, but the point made. And at the very end, I added a single frame. To Emily. From the men you thought would never find out. I saved the file. 2 days left. Then, the guest list began arriving. My aunt flew in from Florida. My college mentor from Seattle. Old coworkers. Childhood friends. They hugged me, beamed at me, toasted me. And all I could think was, you're about to watch something you'll never forget. Emily looked happier than ever. Her smile was brighter. Her laugh louder. She took photos with every arriving guest, arms around my neck like we were the perfect couple. I played my part. One more day. And then the lights would go out. And the truth would play. They say the morning of your wedding feels like magic. That everything feels lighter, like the world is conspiring to give you joy. But when I woke up, it felt like I'd been dropped into someone else's dream. The light slipping through the hotel blinds was soft and golden. Birds chirped outside. My suit hung perfectly ironed, untouched, waiting to be worn. But inside, I was hollow. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, not the version I fell in love with, but the one from the screen. The one smiling sweetly for strangers behind a webcam. The one whispering things meant for me, to people paying by the minute. And Ryan. God, Ryan. I thought about confronting him 100 times. I imagined showing up at his room, punching him, yelling, making him feel half the betrayal I did. But I never did. Because I didn't want rage. I wanted impact. I wanted truth to hit like a freight train. Not just for me, but for everyone. My best man, Aaron, knocked on the door at 8 a.m. sharp. Big day, he said, stepping in with a grin and 2 cups of coffee. Sure is, I replied, taking the cup. I tried to match his smile, but I saw his brow furrow. You all right, man? You've been off lately. I looked at him, really looked at him. Aaron was the only person I hadn't doubted. He never lied, never played games. If anyone deserved the truth, it was him. But I couldn't risk it. Not yet. I'm good, I said. Just a little anxious. He clapped my shoulder. Every guy's anxious before the vows. You're about to commit your whole life, man. That's no small thing. He had no idea. By 10, we were at the venue. Everything was ready. The flowers were arranged. The chairs lined up. The soft hum of pre-wedding music played through the sound system. Emily was in the bridal suite. I wouldn't see her until the ceremony. That was tradition. And for once, I was grateful for tradition. I didn't want to see her face. Not yet. The guests started arriving around 11. My mom looked beautiful in her navy blue dress. My uncle hugged me tighter than usual. Old friends patted me on the back. You ready to be a husband? One of them asked. More ready than you think, I answered. And I meant it. Just not in the way they expected. The DJ approached me discreetly. I've got the video loaded, boss. You want it right before the first dance? Yes, I said. Play it exactly when I cue you. No earlier. He nodded. Got it. The ceremony was set for noon. At 11:55, I was standing behind the stage, heart pounding in my throat, suit tight around my chest. Then the music changed. The pianist started the wedding march. And the doors opened. Everyone stood. And there she was. Emily. She looked breathtaking. The dress fit her like it was stitched from dreams. Her hair glowed in the sunlight. She was crying, real tears. And I realized something in that moment that I didn't expect to feel, sadness. Because despite everything, part of me still wanted to believe. Wanted to rewind time. Wanted this to be real. She walked slowly toward me, eyes locked on mine. I stood still, heart beating like a drum, the video file burning in my pocket. She took my hands. And whispered, I love you. I smiled. I know. The officiant spoke. Vows were read. Rings exchanged. And then, just before the final pronouncement, I spoke. Before we finish, I said, turning to the guests, I want to share something. A video I made. A tribute, really, to the woman I love. A few people clapped softly, confused but curious. Emily looked surprised. Babe. I nodded toward the DJ. He hit play. The lights dimmed slightly. The screen behind the altar flickered to life. It started innocent enough, photos of us laughing, dancing, traveling. People smiled, a few chuckled. Then, the tone shifted. Clips of her walking into that hotel. Her voice on camera. Ryan's voice, too. People went quiet. Emily's face fell. Then came the list. The messages. The receipts. The blurred faces of subscribers. Murmurs rose from the crowd. Gasps. And finally, my voice over the last frame. This is the woman I almost married. The friend I almost trusted. And the betrayal I'll never forget. Silence. Then chaos. People stood, talking over each other. A few got up to leave. My mom looked like she was about to faint. Emily was frozen. Pale. She turned to me, eyes wide. You did this. Yes, I said calmly. Because you weren't going to. Her lip trembled. You don't understand, I was going to stop, I thought if we got married, I could let it all go. But you didn't stop, I said. You just got better at hiding it. Ryan rushed up from the third row, face red, fists clenched. What the hell, man? You could have come to me. I turned to him, quiet fury in my voice. You were supposed to be my best friend. And you were sleeping with my fiancé. How do you think that conversation would have gone? He went silent. Emily stepped forward. Please, we can fix this. Just talk to me. I shook my head. No. You lied to me for months. You let me plan a future around a version of you that doesn't exist. I don't want to fix it. I want to walk away. The officiant stood awkwardly, hands clasped. Should I? I raised my voice slightly. This wedding is off. Gasps again. I turned to the guests. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry you had to see that, but I didn't want to live a lie. And I couldn't let you celebrate one either. Then I walked off the stage. People parted like water. Outside, the sun was too bright. I got in my car. Drove away. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just kept driving. I didn't have a destination, I just knew I couldn't be there anymore. I passed fields. Gas stations. Towns I'd never stopped in. And finally, somewhere hours later, I pulled into a cheap motel, sat on the bed, and exhaled. For the first time in months, I felt free. But that freedom came with grief. Not just over Emily. Over the man I was before I found out. The men who believed in fairy tales. And now. I wasn't him anymore. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the truth didn't break me. Maybe it built me. One painful piece at a time. You'd think that walking away from your own wedding would come with a sense of finality, like slamming a door shut on everything behind it. But the truth is, the echoes linger. That night, in the motel room with faded curtains and a buzzing fluorescent light, I lay on the bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the silence I felt was peace or numbness. I had done the unthinkable. I exposed Emily, humiliated Ryan, and stopped a wedding with 200 guests watching. People would talk. Hell, they already were. My phone buzzed nonstop, dozens of missed calls, messages, voicemails. I hadn't opened a single one. But then, sometime after 2 a.m., I picked up the phone and called one person. My dad. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. Son. You okay? I hadn't spoken to him in almost 6 months. We'd had our share of fallouts, especially after he questioned how fast things were moving with Emily. Yeah, I said quietly. I just needed someone who wouldn't lie to me. He was silent for a second. Then, I'm here. Those 2 words. They cracked something inside me. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tears hit my collarbone. I didn't want it to be like this, I whispered. I thought I had everything figured out. She was it. And I was so wrong. You loved her, he said gently. That's not a weakness. It means you tried. I was so blind. We all are, at first. That's what love does. It makes liars look like soulmates. It paints red flags white. I laughed bitterly. Yeah. Well, I tore the canvas down. He sighed. What you did today, it took guts. You didn't run from the truth. You faced it. Most men wouldn't. We talked for nearly an hour. No judgments. Just a father being there for his son. It didn't fix everything, but for the first time, I didn't feel alone. When I woke the next morning, the motel light was still on. The wedding suit was wrinkled on the chair, looking like a costume from a play that had closed too soon. I took a shower, tossed the suit in the trash, and checked out. Then I drove. No destination. Just distance. About halfway through Nevada, I stopped at a small diner with peeling paint and exactly 3 customers. I sat at the counter, ordered black coffee, and tried to disappear into my own thoughts. But the waitress, a woman in her late 40s with tired eyes and a kind smile, noticed me. You okay, honey? She asked, pouring my refill. I hesitated, then said, I left my wedding yesterday. Her eyes didn't widen like I expected. She just nodded slowly. Good for you. I blinked. What? She leaned on the counter. You'd be amazed how many people don't. They see the red flags, but they still walk down that aisle. Then they spend years wondering why they're miserable. I stared at her. You sound like you've been there. 3 times, she said with a grin. I learned the hard way that walking away is sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself. I don't know why, but her words hit harder than most. Maybe because they came from someone who understood. Someone who wasn't trying to sugarcoat or shame. As I left, she handed me my change and said, pain's temporary. Regret. That's forever. I kept driving. A week passed. I slept in cheap motels. Ate in quiet towns. I didn't call anyone. I didn't open social media. I just existed. But eventually, reality catches up. One evening, as I sat by a lake watching the sun go down, I opened my email. There it was, a message from Emily. Subject line, please. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. I know I have no right to ask anything from you, but please let me explain. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was scared. Scared of losing you if you knew. Scared of giving up that other life before I was ready. I started the chem stuff before I met you. At first, it was just for money. Then it became complicated. I stopped sleeping with anyone. I swear. But I couldn't stop the rest. I didn't know how. I kept telling myself I'd stop after the wedding. That once we were married, I'd be yours and only yours. But I was lying to myself. And to you. And I'm so sorry. What you did at the wedding hurt. But maybe I deserved it. I still love you. And I wish you could forgive me. Emily. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Because forgiveness wasn't a key that opened every door. Sometimes, it's just a way to close them gently. A few days later, I got a message from Erin. Man, I don't even know what to say. But I'm proud of you. You didn't let anyone make a fool of you. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. I smiled. That one, I replied to. Thanks. I'll be back soon. But not yet. I needed one more thing. Closure. So I drove back. Back to the city. Back to the apartment I once shared with Emily. I didn't call her. I just stopped by when I knew she'd be gone. I packed what was mine. Left what wasn't. And on the kitchen counter, I left a note. I loved you. I really did. But love without truth is just illusion. Take care of yourself. I hope you find your way. Then I walked out. Locked the door behind me. And for the first time, I felt light. Not happy. Not healed. But lighter. Like I had finally stopped dragging the corpse of a dead relationship behind me. I drove to Erin's place. He opened the door and just pulled me into a hug. No questions. Just brotherhood. We stayed up drinking beer on the balcony, watching the lights of the city pulse below. At one point, he asked, "Do you regret anything?" I thought about it. The love. The betrayal. The wedding. The video. The fallout. And I said, no. I regret what I didn't see sooner. But I don't regret walking away. Because sometimes, survival means choosing yourself. Even when it hurts. Even when you walk out in front of 200 people and say, this stops here. Even when your heart's still bleeding. Because healing starts with honesty. And I was finally being honest, not with Emily, not with Ryan, but with me. That was the beginning. Of whatever came next. Of whoever I'd become. I thought walking away would be the end of the story. I imagined a clear line drawn in the sand, before and after. But the truth? Life doesn't break that clean. It unravels in quiet moments, in small choices, in the unexpected ways healing begins to take root where you thought nothing could grow again. It had been 3 months since the wedding. That wasn't enough time for the shock waves to ripple outward and settle. Enough time for the gossip to fade into the background noise of people's own messy lives. But for me, the dust was just starting to clear. I was back at work, finally. My boss, to his credit, didn't ask questions when I returned early one Monday morning with trimmed hair, a clean shave, and a tighter jaw. He just looked up from his coffee, nodded, and said, "Glad you're back, Mark." The office was the same, fluorescent lights, stale coffee, muted keyboards clicking in rhythm, but I wasn't. The man who had filled that space before, who smiled wide and loved loud and never doubted for a second that his life was on track, he was gone. And yet, I didn't miss him. One evening, after wrapping up a late client call, I stayed behind as the cleaning crew swept through. I sat in the dark, facing the skyline through the window, watching the sun disappear behind the buildings. I had nothing to rush home to, no one texting to ask where I was. I thought of Emily. Not with anger. Not even with longing. Just stillness. I never responded to her email. And she never sent another one. From what I'd heard, she moved out of the apartment a few weeks after I left. Ryan was gone too, disappeared from our circles like a ghost ashamed of being seen. I suppose I expected some big confrontation, some final showdown, but maybe we'd all run out of words. Or maybe the silence was the ending we all deserved. I had boxed up the wedding footage. All of it. Not just the video I played that day, but everything, the proposal on the pier, the cake tasting, the dress fittings. I thought about deleting them 100 times. But every time I hovered my finger over the erase button, something inside me held back. Because that wasn't just her. That was me too. That was who I'd been. And pretending it didn't happen wouldn't erase what it taught me. Some nights, I'd play a clip, one of the harmless ones. Emily laughing as frosting landed on her nose. Her dancing in the living room in that ridiculous penguin onesie. Me, behind the camera, whispering, "How did I get this lucky?" I'd smile, wince, and close the laptop. Not every memory has to be a wound. Some can just be a scar. A reminder. One weekend, Erin and I went hiking, something we used to do all the time before everything. We reached the summit just before sunset. The air was thin, the view wide and endless. He looked over at me, wiping sweat from his forehead, and said, "You finally look like you again." I laughed. "Who's that?" He shrugged. "Someone who knows better. Hurts a little less. Thinks a little more. Someone more bitter." I offered. "No," he said. "Someone more real." That stayed with me. It was weird adjusting to the quiet. I had spent so long planning a future, dinners with friends as a couple, travel plans, mortgage calculators, and suddenly I was just one again. One toothbrush, one mug in the sink, one set of keys on the counter. But being alone stopped feeling like a punishment. It became a reset. I started painting again. Not well, God, no, but it gave me something to do with my hands on slow Sundays. I read more. Called my mom more. Apologized to my sister for shutting her out when she raised red flags early on. She just hugged me and said, "I knew you'd see it when you were ready." And eventually, I met someone. Not in the way people expect. Not on a dating app or in a bar. Just at the bookstore. She was sitting in the cafe, laptop open, latte in hand, struggling to write something. I asked if I could share the outlet. We started talking. Her name was Claire. She was funny, sharp, the kind of woman who didn't try to impress and somehow impressed me anyway. She didn't ask about my past on day one. I didn't offer it. We just talked. About books. About favorite cities. About why pineapple on pizza should be illegal. We laughed. A lot. It wasn't fireworks. It was a steady warmth. A kind of calm I didn't know I needed. We exchanged numbers. I waited a full day before texting. And when we did go out for dinner, I didn't wear the cologne Emily liked. I didn't talk about her. I didn't pretend I hadn't been through something. But I also didn't wear my pain like a warning sign. Claire was different. Not better, not worse. Just hers was a story I hadn't heard yet. And I was ready for new stories. A few weeks in, I told her the truth, about the wedding, the reveal, all of it. I waited for the recoil, the sympathy, the judgment. But she just nodded and said, "You've been through a fire. But you walked out." That matters more than how it started. That night, as I watched her talk about her favorite painting, hands waving, eyes bright, I realized something. I had forgiven Emily. Not because she asked me to. Not because she earned it. But because I was tired of dragging that weight around. She made her choices. I made mine. And somewhere between heartbreak and healing, I found a version of myself I actually liked. The version who didn't settle for illusion. The version who spoke up. The version who walked away not because he didn't love someone, but because he finally loved himself enough to let go of what wasn't real. It took me 30 years to learn that love isn't about the big gestures. It's not the ring, or the vows, or the perfectly planned wedding. It's about truth. It's about waking up next to someone and knowing, deeply, that they are who they say they are. That you don't have to pretend. That you're not afraid of what happens when the lights are off and the cameras stop rolling. Love without truth is theater. And I'd had enough of playing a part. So yeah, maybe I didn't get the wedding. Maybe I didn't get the fairy tale. But I got something better. I got out. I grew. I healed. And now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the men who almost married a lie. I see the men who chose truth. And that was the real beginning.